委員，我哋
Members, we have a quorum and this is the appointed time, so I call this meeting to order. Item 1 on the agenda. I'd like members to note that after the regular meeting on the 17th of November 2017, the panel altogether received 13 information papers. Details are set out in item 1 of the agenda, one of which is a joint letter from Mr. Lam Shek-ting, Deputy Chair, and Mr. Ted Hui, that is LC paper CB record 4421/1718-01, a request for a joint meeting to be held with the panel on environmental affairs to discuss the policy of electric cars and to discuss this item before the announcement of the next budget in February. As chairman, I discussed the matter with the chair of the EA panel, Ms. Tanya Chan, and I'd like to consult members' views on the matter. Whether you agree, that is, if the administration also agrees, that a joint meeting be held so as to express your views. Agree. Maybe a show of hands. Those who agree, please raise your hands. 3, 4. Those who 5. Those who disagree. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I need to raise my hand as well. It's a draw. Mr. Ben Chan just walked in. I haven't announced the result. We don't need to claim a division, right? Mr. Ben Chan, we're discussing the first item. Deputy Chair Mr. Lam Shek-ting and Mr. Ted Hui jointly request that we hold a joint meeting with the panel on environmental affairs to discuss the policy of electric cars and also to discuss this item before the next budget is announced in February. So I first of all would like to consult members' views on whether you agree to this joint meeting. Those who agree, once again, 5 of you. Those who disagree. Mr. Elwin Young just walked in. So I need to repeat that again. Let's do it again. Do we agree to hold a joint meeting with the panel on environmental affairs to discuss the electric cars policy? Those who agree, please raise your hands. 6. Those against, please raise your hands. Another one just came in. What should we do? Those against, please raise your hands. 7. So, it's been decided that we do not agree that a joint meeting should be held. Item 2. Items or matters arising or matters to be discussed at the next meeting. Members, please refer to CB bracket 4445/1718 bracket 01. List of outstanding items for discussion. Well, I pressed the button long ago. Please press the button only when I ask you to. But I wanted to discuss item 1. We've moved on to item 2. We don't need to discuss item 1, but I want to say something. Because Mr. Lam Shek-ting and Mr. Ted Hui previously wrote to the panel, members should have received the letters as well. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the other one in front of us. Sorry, I didn't see you raise your hand. So let's continue. CB bracket 4445/1718 bracket 02, list of follow-up actions. Would members please note that? Ms. Tanya Chan. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Jeremy Tam, Dr. KK Kwok, and Mr. Elvin Young, myself, just prepared a joint letter regarding the XRL. We want the latest operational details after the fares have been announced. We wanted to forward this letter to Mr. Michael TIEN because he's chair of the subcommittee on matters relating to the railway. But in relation to the frequencies and fares, the Secretariat has advised that such matters be discussed at the panel meeting instead. The next meeting is scheduled for the 23rd of February, which I have also mentioned in the letter. There should be ample time for the administration to prepare for the meeting. I see that there are three items for the next meeting already, but I hope that there would be a chance for them to report on the latest progress, first of all, and also to start a discussion after all letters have been received from members so that we can have a more focused discussion. Indeed, you have prepared a very detailed letter, and according to the administration, there is a deadline, and we should wait for their reply first and see if the answer is satisfactory. Otherwise, I may discuss with the administration whether to add this item at the next meeting. Ms. Claudia Mo. Thank you, Chairman. We still have a lot of questions about transport issues of the XRL, whether they are non-stop trains, what about the fares. There are still a lot of outstanding issues. The administration said that the local legislation regarding XRL will be tabled in February. We should have a discussion here first. And we should have a joint meeting, and this should be the deadline for holding a joint meeting for the AJLS panel. But the administration hasn't answered us, so when can we decide on that? It's similar to Ms. Daniel Chan's question. We should wait for the administration's reply. If it is not good enough, then we can say this to Mr. Lam Chak-ting when we have a meeting with the administration, whether a special arrangement can be made. Thank you, Ms. Tanya Chan. If we have a joint meeting, then of course it is good because we had such meetings before, or at least we should discuss it at the House Committee. My letter is focused on matters relating to the panel on transport, so I hope that you can work on my suggestion at least. I think the aim is the same, although the different issues may be a bit different. Anyway, let's move on to the third item. The next regular meeting will be held on the 23rd of February 2018, and we're going to discuss the following two items. First, the Cross-Bay Link Chung-hung construction, and also proposed creation of one permanent principal transport officer post in the Management and Paratransit branch, one permanent principal transport officer in the NT regional office, and one permanent chief engineer post in Technical Services branch of the Transport Department. And third item, biennial review on the need to issue new private driving instructors licenses. Now, I understand that members have a lot of views on all these items. So members, do you agree that we should advance the meeting next time to 10 a.m.? Alright, no objection. Third item, matters arising from the special meeting on the 11th of December 2017. We didn't have enough time last time. We should deal with 3 motions. I won't allow a discussion now. I think we already had a very detailed discussion on the relevant items last time. So the first one is the motion moved by Mr. Michael LUK. It's also seconded. You will find it on the screen now. It's seconded by Mr. Ron Chan. You don't need to explain. You can just read it out. I think everybody is clear. So let's vote on it. Do we need to claim a division? No? So, please vote on Mr. Michael LUK's motion. Those in favor, please raise your hands. Those against, please raise your hands. Those against? Mr. Ben Chen, are you against? None. Any abstention? No. Alright, motion passed. Next, moved by Mr. LAU Kwok-fan, seconded by Mr. Wilson Orr. Show it on the screen. This is a rather long motion. It's been circulated to members. No division claimed. Those in favor, please raise your hands. "14. Those against, raise your hand. None. Abstention? No. Motion carried. Third one, from Mr. Michael TIEN. A shorter one. Similarly, please have a show of hands. Those in favor, please. "14. Those against, please raise your hand. None. Abstention? None. Motion carried. Thank you. Yes. Do we need a seconder for these motions? Because some of the motions do not have a seconder. I've confirmed that with Madam Clerk. No need. Next item.
I am a director of the Star Ferry Company, so for Agenda Item 4 on new franchise for the Star Ferry Company Limited, the Deputy Chairman will chair the meeting. Any objection from members? No? All right, then now I'll pass the floor to the Deputy Chairman, and let's invite government officials to come in. Thank you, Chairman. Colleagues, if you would like to speak, please press the electronic system button. Let's welcome Mr. Frank Chan, Secretary for Transport and Housing, Ms. Mabel Chan, Commissioner for Transport, and other government officials. Colleagues, on this agenda item, if you have any direct or indirect pecuniary interest, please declare the interest. Mr. Yik, you want me to repeat the point? Or you want to repeat your declaration? Yes, Chairman. I'd like to declare that... Oh, sorry. I must say that I am a director of the Star Ferry Company Limited. So this is the point I would like to declare. All right, thank you. Okay, Secretary, do you want to make some opening remarks within 4 minutes? Yes, I will try my best to be fast. Chairman, thank you. The Star Ferry has a long history. This year, they are having their 120th anniversary. So between the Hong Kong Island and Kowloon, it is the most economical means of transport. On Star Ferry, passengers can appreciate the scenery of Victoria Harbour. It is a tourist hotspot. At the same time, it is also a cultural historical landmark. It marks the collective memory of Hong Kong people. For the franchise, actually, it will expire on the 31st of March this year. Last year, in the February meeting of this panel, concerning the government and the Star Ferry Company's deliberation on the new franchise, the panel did not have any objection. And in February to April last year, concerning the new franchise, the government did a public consultation. Having taken into consideration the panel's and members of the public views, the government has been very pragmatic in deliberating with the Star Ferry to strive for improvement of the service. At the same time, the Star Ferry operates the busiest route across the Victoria Harbour, and also it has a special historical background. Together with other relevant bureaus on environmental protection and harbourfront enhancement, we are working more closely together so passengers and tourists can undertake various activities in a very comfortable environment of the harbourfront. And we also want to enhance Hong Kong's international image. Up till now, our deliberation has more or less been completed. Now I will go through undertakings of the Star Ferry concerning the franchise in order to enhance the performance of their crew. While financial condition permits, they will take into consideration technological development, and for the whole vessel fleet, they will install a low-emission, environment-friendly system so as to reduce emission, especially emission of black smoke. In order to make things convenient for passengers to use the pier, the Star Ferry will do some works on the management works of the connection between Central and also the pier, and the government will also study how to enable Star Ferry to make more flexible use of the Central Ferry Pier and Wan Chai Pier. And commercial elements can be injected so that there will be more tourist-friendly facilities, so that Star Ferry can earn non-ferry fare revenue to subsidize their operation. Now, Star Ferry will try their best to make sure that fare is affordable and reasonable. And in accordance with existing scale and mechanism, they will offer fare concessions to small children, disabled, and the elderly. And Wi-Fi will be installed, and then they will step up staff training. They will open up their websites and mobile app information. Then within the new franchise, Star Ferry will continue to review a reasonable or appropriate salary level for their staff. They will continue to provide on-the-job training. There are more and more diversified electronic payment systems in the market, so in the franchise agreement, we will add in related clauses so as to bring in relevant technology in an orderly way. Chairman, the Star Ferry Company's undertakings have more or less responded to public expectations. And after listening to this panel's views, we will submit the proposal to EXCO, and then if it is approved, then it will commence on the 1st of April after the expiry of the last franchise. We're happy to take members' questions. Thank you. Thank you, Secretary. Today, there will be a fire drill at 12:30. And 11 colleagues have indicated their interest to speak. So we have originally allocated half an hour to this item. So now I will give each member 3 minutes, including both the question and the answer. So please seize the time. I will stop you when time is up. First, Mr. Chen Chen-ying. Thank you, Chairman. Now, if you look at fair service quality, corporate social responsibility, and pledge about environmental protection, I do think that the franchise should be renewed. Now, they are applying for a franchise period of 15 years. For other operators, usually they only have 3 years. So can the government explain the reasons behind this difference in the term? What are the main points of consideration? My second question is, for the new franchise, Star Ferry is asked to work on the management of the on-ground connection between the ferry pier and Central. So, how much extra resources will be involved? Well, my impression is that most passengers of Star Ferry are tourists. So, can you take the opportunity to publicize Hong Kong so that the cost can also be spent on some renovation works? Thank you. Concerning the term of the franchise, based on the law, we can grant at maximum a 15-year term. As Mr. Chan said, for other operators, they have 3-year franchise. This is mainly because of the overall service quality and people's feedback on their service and whether the operator can meet our expectation and requirements. Now, if you look at the 2 routes operated by Star Ferry across Victoria Harbour, in 2016 and 17 we did a survey and we had some understanding of public opinion, and we realized that passengers are very happy with their service. Concerning environmental protection and also service quality and efficiency and also the treatment of their employees, they are able to meet public expectations. So that's why we offer this 15-year period so that they can make investment into details covered by the franchise. And then as regards the information or resources for the Vantage platform, actually on first floor there will be a comprehensive management in Central Pier and also the one on top of Wan Chai Pier. The area will not become bigger, but with enhanced management, members of the public will have a better environment so that they can enjoy more. So as regards publicity for tourists, we will work with the tourism board to see how we can cooperate. Thank you. Next, Ms. Tanya Chan. Thank you, Chairman. We understand the point about lengthening the franchise period. Well, just now a point was made about environmental protection, and in para 14 it is said that they will put in place a diesel electric propulsion system, and Star Ferry is applying for resources, but do we really need a franchise period of 15 years? There are points about improvement of the toilet. I frequently take Star Ferry. Now, I think they can also think about the number of gates. Now, can they follow the practice of MTRC? There are 2 levels, and then there can be some triage of passengers. What about nursery rooms? I can't see that online. Now, if shops and restaurants will be opened, actually many people patronize facilities at the harbour front. For example, in Discovery Bay, there is a very, very nice place. There are 2 booths, one selling beer, one selling some skewers. So I think this is a way that they can consider. Thank you. Right, Secretary. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Chan, for the question concerning 15 years. So actually today we are making a report to the panel, and what will be the final term that will be decided by EXCO. We proposed 15 years because of their past performance. Ms. Chan just mentioned the number of gates and also whether or not there should be nursery room. We will pass these points to Star Ferry for consideration. So members of the public can be convenienced. They will be given more comfort. We do think that these are some valid points. As regards catering service for restaurants and also sales outlets, I think these should be planned by Star Ferry. And concerning price, well, I think they will also consider the right price point. Anyway, we will take note of Ms. Chan's points. Later, when we have more detailed communication with Star Ferry, we will relay your points to them. Thank you, Chairman. I think there's the need for a bigger waiting area because during busy hours there are many people. How to make good use of the space? Well, I think Star Ferry needs to consider in greater detail. The nursery room may occupy some space of the waiting room. Next, Ms. Claudia Mo. Thank you, Chairman. I do agree that Star Ferry is a cultural icon of Hong Kong. It's also part of our international image. I don't know whether any of you still remembers. There is a very famous slogan of Star Ferry. If you want to be a star, comma, be a ferry. Well, is that brilliant? Students in the past learned English this way. You said the franchise period has not been fixed at 15 years yet. 15 years sounds long, but I am not against it. For other operators, the term is usually 3 years. But I think we all understand the supply and demand of ferry service. Now, concerning the relationship between the government and Star Ferry, let's say if it is really 15 years or 10 years, if there are serious problems during the term, or if Star Ferry is going to say that they would like to exit from the market or from the contract, well, is there any exit policy in the contract? So how do the two sides negotiate on this point? Secretary, thank you, Ms. Mo, for the question. Perhaps I did not make myself clear enough. According to Section 140 of the ordinance, well, the franchise period can be 15 years at maximum. If this is the point that we need to pay attention to.
And again, this is hypothetical, assuming that in a franchise, during the franchise period, the Star Ferry did not perform well enough, and that this performance is disappointing. Basically, we could intervene, and we also have the right to terminate its franchise. So, with efforts made by the Star Ferry and also with enhanced monitoring by the government, we hope that their performance could be up to standard to the satisfaction of the public, so that we do not need to invoke any exit mechanism. But if necessary, we do have legal backing to deal with the matter. What about Star Ferry on its own initiative wishes to exit the market? Is there a mechanism? Secretary, thank you, Chairman. Yes, we have this exit arrangement. So can you tell us more details? Don't just answer yes. Well, usually for a franchise or for an agreement, there would be a clause on how matters should be dealt with in unforeseen circumstances. For example, in the new franchise, if we want the other side to improve on certain services, etc., we could do it by way of including a clause in the franchise. But if there is a dispute, it will be done on a legal basis. We have 9 more members waiting to ask questions. After Mr. Ho Kai-ming has asked his question, and I will not accept other questions from members. So please press the button if you wish to speak. Dr. LAU Kwok. Thank you, Chairman. Star Ferry provides affordable means of transport, a convenient one for the public. It is also a very good means of transport for the public to enjoy the view of the Victoria Harbour. And when I was young, I studied in Kowloon City, and I lived there. And I would take a bus to Tsim Sha Tsui, and then I would take the Star Ferry to the City Hall Library in Central, and I would spend my afternoon there. So I do not have any strong views on renewing the franchise for the Star Ferry Company, because we also like to promote green public transport. And on improving the emission of vessels, resources are necessary. A longer franchise would offer assurance to the Star Ferry so that they may make a good investment decision. So I find this current proposal appropriate. But I have a question for the Secretary. There is serious congestion at all of the harbour crossing tunnels. We have been discussing the issue at various meetings. What about marine traffic? With hustle and bustle, sometimes a ferry service may be a thorny issue. The return may not be very good, and it's difficult to find an operator for certain routes. But if we take a look around the world, they all try to develop marine transport. Examples can be found in the US and Europe, and I want to know whether the Secretary will conduct a more comprehensive review. You should not be myopic. You should think for the long term. If we develop marine transport, it can help alleviate traffic congestion and also offer a very good alternative for the public. Before the Secretary answers, can you first explain, Dr. Lau, what has it to do with the Star Ferries franchise? Well, I just want the Secretary to talk about the longer-term policy of the government. It is related. Well, we used to have ferries carrying vehicles as well. Well, not just that, about ferry service. Well, basically, the Victoria Harbour is a beautiful harbour with busy marine traffic. I understand that the Tourism Development Board is looking into how tourists can better enjoy the scenery of the harbour. As for cross-harbour traffic, we do hold a position. I think perhaps on another occasion I can share my experience with Dr. Lau. Mr. Ho Kai-ming, if Secretary also rides on the Star Ferry, you should understand that the age of coxswains are really getting old, and that's an issue. Whereas for ocean-going vessels, they have manpower surplus. Well, their job nature may be different in terms of difficulty, but what about the salaries? For ocean-going vessels, the starting salary is $35,000. For coxswains for Star Ferry, the starting salary is $10,000. There is a difference in terms of the experience requirement, but because of such a gap in their pace, it's difficult to attract new blood to the industry. Now, the Star Ferry is asking for franchise renewal. I understand that they would like to recruit younger personnel, but the vessel companies in Hong Kong are unable to provide a sort of standardized pay with stable working hours for the new blood. So what can the government do in terms of coordination so that there is career prospect and training opportunities for the young people? Second point, Star Ferry plies the route between Hong Kong and Kowloon. But have you considered consolidating the several routes currently plying Kwun Tong as well, so that we can have a cruise service like the Thames River, and for people to take a tour around Victoria Harbour? This is also responding to Dr. Loy Kwok's point. A bigger issue. Third point, I am also a ferry passenger. I don't know why all ferries in Hong Kong allow cyclists to bring their bicycles on board. Save and except the upper deck of a Star Ferry route from Central to Tsim Sha Tsui, even with the wheel dismounted, even stricter than the MTR. On manpower training, in the coming franchise with Star Ferry, we make deliberate effort to discuss the pay and prospect for the staff, including training opportunities to cater for the needs of frontline staff. The VTC offers training opportunities, and in the paper we also set out the career prospects and a career path for coxswains. And for the Tourism the point on tourism, I will follow up on this issue with the tourism board. What about bicycles? Can you provide a written reply after the meeting? I'll defer to my colleague to answer your question. No time. Written reply, please. Anyone else would like to ask questions? Press the button. I'll draw a line. Next, Mr. Yu Siwing. Thank you, Chairman. I agree that Star Ferry is the major means of transport in Hong Kong. It is also an important tourism resource. The existing operator is doing quite well, in my view, in terms of the level of fares and the overall management. So I will support the renewal of franchise. My question is this. About the green measure, there will be subsidy from the government, but the majority of resources will come from the operator, along with the recurrent expenditure and hardware expenditure. There would be an obvious hike in their expenditure, and I want to know whether the fares will be affected. Next, I'd like to pick up on Mr. Ho Kai-ming's point. Their staff is aging. I understand that SF currently has 170 staff, most of them rather aged. I want to know whether you have details in this regard and whether there is any plan for the existing or the new operator to make the establishment younger. If so, what would be the resources? About the age of practitioners, we understand that they are rather aged, and that is why in this franchise negotiation, we're going to discuss with SF on staff remuneration and pays and benefits so that they build a proper career path for younger staff members. And as set out in the paper in terms of expenditure, the annual profit is around 4 million for the Star Ferry, and for the retrofitting of facilities, they apply with the Green Transport Fund. Will fare levels be affected? Well, basically, we monitor the level of fares, and as set out in the paper, SF has undertaken that the fleet will be updated on a yearly basis so that within the franchise period, the succession of staff and also replacement of fleet will be completed. But obviously, they would need to put in a lot of resources to upgrade their hardware. The annual expenditure may amount to several $million, eating away their annual profit. I want the government to make it clear to them that they should not just consider the franchise and ignore the operational difficulties. Apart from the Green Transport Subsidy Fund, apart from fare box revenue, the non-fare box revenue can also subsidize their expenditure. Next, Mr. LAU Kwok-fan. Thank you, Chairman. The Star Ferry has a daily ridership of about 50,000 only. Comparing to MTRCL's 5 million ridership, it seems a small number, but as said by other members, the Star Ferry has historical significance. It is also a good tourist attraction, so I agree and I support renewing SF's franchise. But I think improvement is needed. For example, for the Central Pier in our vicinity, apart from fare box revenue, I think the government should discuss with them about the Central Pier, make it pluralistic, and I think that it will help increase the non-box fare revenue, because as far as the location is concerned, it is a prime location close to the IFC. The government should discuss with the SF to make better use of the Central Pier to make it more attractive. On the other hand, as far as land transport is concerned, whether one rides the MTR or rides a car, there is traffic congestion, and the railway has reached its capacity. So I think more routes should be operated, and the government should encourage the Star Ferry to develop new routes so that ferries can become a major means of transport for cross-harbor routes. Another point, to upgrade the ferry or to have it retrofitted, the cost is about 7 million. So the total cost of retrofitting 8 ferries will about $56 million. The subsidy only amounts to $6 million. I want to know whether the government will consider increasing the subsidy amount so that they can retrofit the ferries quicker to further improve the quality of water in Victoria Harbour. We have a daily ridership of 50,000, but annually it amounts to 19 million, so this is quite a lot. I think that the issue is close to our heart as well as the SF's. We understand that non-fare box revenue will be generated to subsidize ferry services. As for retrofitting the ferries, there is a cap as far as the Green Transport Subsidy Fund is concerned. It's capped at $12 million per company. And the SF has undertaken, during the franchise period, 1 ferry will be retrofitted each year. Of course, the quicker the better. But at the same time, we need to allow the SF to complete the retrofitting work based on its own capability.
Mr. Chang Chung-tai, thank you, Chairman. I understand that the Star Ferry's service quality is reasonable and actually better than other operators. But there are points that the government should give a clearer account. As stated in the annex to the paper, there's a public consultation. And there's a point about more non-fare revenue. And the government stated that they have allowed Star Ferry to lease out part of the spaces for commercial and retail purposes. In para 17 and 18, on harbourfront enhancement, you said that you would like to remove obstacles and lower barriers and so on. I think this is a special favorable treatment for this renewal of contract. Now, the Central Pier number 7 and the observation deck in the past were managed by the government, but in the new contract, they will be directly managed by Star Ferry. So these 2 points added together will be such that in the coming 15 years, the government will let Star Ferry manage that site, and Star Ferry can lease out or sublease some of the spaces. Well, I would like to have a better understanding of this arrangement. Concerning the public space that will be used by members of the public and tourists, how can you make sure that public right of using this space will not be affected? Because you are actually contracting out the management of this site to Star Ferry. Now, for the site or for the piece of land outside Times Square, well, it used to be public space, but then something was done, so members of the Hong Kong public lost the opportunity of using it. Now, 15 years is a long period, but then there are some parts in this paper that may affect public rights. So what do you mean by lowering barriers or removing certain obstacles? Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chang, for the question. Regarding public service, of course, it is most important to take care of public interests. So, just now, this point about the use of public space was made. The whole team of ours had visited the site. And concerning the use of public space and efficiency, there is some room for improvement. I said that management will be done by Star Ferry. Actually, they have to comply with town planning requirements. If there is any rezoning, they have to follow the procedures. So we are only working with this concept and future supporting facilities. But then any changes will have to meet all legal requirements. There won't be any favor to be extended. Mr. Leung Chi-chang, thank you, Chairman. So patronage is 50,000 for Star Ferry. Fare level is low, but revenue is quite good every year. I think there is 4 million income, right? If I remember correctly. You can't say that this is a very good profit, and you cannot say that there is no profit either. I find the fare level rather low. For the adult fare is $2 something. If you really sign contract for 15 years with them, well, first of all, you will still monitor the fare level. And number two, concerning the new system, the diesel and electricity system, I don't know what system is that. Can you explain? Is there the need to replace all the existing systems? Now there is one in the test phase, and is this a necessary condition? Is replacement of all the existing engines a necessary condition in the contract? Secretary, concerning the 15-year term, that has to be approved by EXCO. 15 years is just the longest possible period. Concerning fare, Star Ferry had promised that they will maintain a low and reasonable affordable fare level as long as their financial condition permits. Secretary, will you still monitor or regulate the fare? Yes, we do have a mechanism, and it has to go through EXCO. And then concerning the retrofitting of the ferries, well, I will defer to Mr. Ho of the Environment EPD. Now, Star Ferry is using a diesel propulsion system. Now, they have applied to the Green Transport Fund to retrofit one ferry with diesel electric propulsion system. In other words, the diesel engine will propel the ferry, and then as a result there will be a better use of fuel, and fuel consumption can be reduced, emission can be reduced, and this time they will replace the old engine with a new one. For the new engine, emission is even less. We had tested the diesel electric propulsion system, and the emission of black smoke is reduced by 75%. Sorry, Mr. Leung Chi-chang, if any of your questions have not been answered, they will give you written reply. Mr. Tommy Zhang. Right, Chairman, I will try my best to be fast. I have a few questions. I'm not worried about environmental protection. I'm worried whether they can make money. And after making some money, well, I definitely have confidence that they will invest in replacing the ferries and making the system more environment friendly. I have a question about Para 20. Members or colleagues may be worried about whether Star Ferry will become better off and so on. Well, concerning Para 20, some time ago I did a study at pier number 7 and 8. They are now vacant, and they are managed by Star Ferry. I also approached the Harbourfront Commission, and I talked to their members, and they like my plan a lot, but then the site belongs to the government, and so, well, Star Ferry won't lease the site to me while they also have to do a lot of work. I'm not saying that I still have the interest to do it, but then I think you need to think of how to use the site. It is now vacant. There are people going there, and the place is only used for folding newspapers. If I remember correctly, at some piers, there are some restaurants who would like to do alfresco dining, but then you did not allow. Actually, the scenery is really excellent. People may want to enjoy a glass of wine there. So if you can relax your requirement or rule, well, Star Ferry can get more income. Then, so I want to ask you about the site in between Piers 7 and 8. A few years ago, I talked to the Bureau and the department about this. So does Para 20 include that site? So in the future, they can use it for a commercial purpose? Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. Just now, I made a brief response. I think we have identified the same issue. Concerning public place, we would like to make most use of it. So concerning alfresco dining, we need to discuss with the Harbourfront Enhancement Committee, and if there is any rezoning required, we have to go to TPB. So we will discuss with Star Ferry. I want to know whether the site between Piers 7 and 8 is included. Yes, the ground floor. Then what about the part demolished? Which part you are talking about? On top there is a restaurant. Okay, Tommy Zhang, can you ask your question in writing? Okay, I want to say that the Liberal Party supports this proposal. Next, Mr. Poon Siu Ping. I have a welfare service panel next door. Perhaps my question has already been answered. Concerning the franchise, we have to consider reasonable treatment for employees. Well, staff costs account for 60% of their total costs. In the future, of course, staff performance should be enhanced. For example, they should be fluent in Mandarin and English, as stated in the annex to the paper. Of course, this company wants to make a profit, but how can we make sure that employees will be treated in a reasonable way? What will the government do? Then about environmental protection, Para 4 of the paper states that if all 8 vessels have to be retrofitted, the cost will be 50-odd million. Of course, they will also apply to the fund. Now, concerning this cost of retrofitting the ferries, will the government pay the bill, or if the Star Ferry need to pay? And then what about the staff costs accounting for 60% of total costs? Secretary. Chairman, on Mr. Poon's question, I want to clarify. Concerning the upgrading of vessel fleets, well, this has to be borne by the Star Ferry, and non-fare revenue can also subsidize the cost. If they sign a new contract with us, then I believe they will consider their own financial arrangement and whether they can make ends meet. This is a commercial society, so they will consider that situation. As regards employees, you want to know how the government will intervene. Now, for any employment contract, we hope the employer and the employees can discuss salary and fringe benefit in a very reasonable and peaceful way. We will also pay attention to the numbers. In the past, Star Ferry employees enjoyed reasonable pay adjustment. So we will continue to pay attention to pay adjustment of Star Ferry employees. We will also listen to employees' views. We hope the two sides can cooperate harmoniously so they can offer very good service to the public. Thank you. Next, Mr. Chen Han-pan. Well, every year, if Star Ferry only earns a profit of 4 million, then they will get 50 million in 15 years, but then they will have to spend 50 million to retrofit the ferries. This is a big problem. With this 15-year contract, well, if they have to do this retrofitting, they will face the difficulty. You only give financial assistance of 6 million or 12 million. Are you going to increase it? Will you give tax concessions to encourage them to replace the vessels? Now they operate on Victoria Harbour. If the vessels are cleaner, this is good to the two sides of Victoria Harbour. And then about para 18, as Mr. Tommy Zhang said, very often the government will say that they will allow the operator to operate the place, but then it is a public space and they allow commercial operation. Very often the government tends to be conservative. So on this point, how will the government relax the restrictions? My third question is, some members said 15-year franchise period seems long, but then investment is huge in operating ferry service. So I hope that the franchise term can be lengthened so that they can enjoy reasonable return. Secretary, in the annex of the paper, we gave some explanations. Apart from fare income, there's also non-fare revenue. From January to October 2017, non-fare revenue amounted to 28.6 million, as stated in the paper.
So if all 8 ferries are retrofitted, according to the paper, the total cost will be around $56 million. We believe that the non-fare box revenue can subsidize the expenditure in this regard. As for removing obstacle and increasing space, perhaps I can defer to Ms. Chen, the Commissioner, to respond to that. About public open space, responding to Mr. Tommy Zhang and Mr. Ben Chan's suggestions, without contravening the relevant requirements on use of public space, we will coordinate with the relevant departments to look into the use of, say, the first floor of Central Pier, how the use of public open space there can be consolidated so that we can make it more accessible to the open space, so that its use can be optimized for the purpose of revitalizing the harbor and the harbor front. As for the link between the ground floor of the central terminal building, SF will take up the management responsibility of the ground floor, and they will also work closely with the government to see whether we have any out-of-the-box ideas in revitalizing the harbor front. Dr. Helena Wong. Thank you, Chairman. I support ferries. About the Star Ferry, the issue is renewing its franchise, and I have 2 questions. First, about ferry routes, only 2 routes are available at the moment: Central to Tsim Sha Tsui and Wan Chai to Tsim Sha Tsui. We have abandoned piers, but we have different development areas in Kai Tak and in West Kowloon. For the WKCD, West Kowloon Cultural District, we are requesting the authority to reserve space for pier facility to be provided, and they have made this undertaking. But all along, there hasn't been any news on new ferry routes. So when you renew the franchise with the SF, will you discuss with the company on operating new routes, including one plying WKCD and the other plying Kai Tak? In the past, we used to have other ferry routes such as Hong Ham Wan Chai, and the operation of the route has been suspended for a few years already. Can we revive that route? Will you discuss with them? Because we have piers, we do not have ferry routes. So when you discuss the franchise arrangement with them, discuss with them. Do not cease the operation of routes that are not profitable, and operate only profitable routes, because we have serious congestion at the harbor crossings. Please discuss with them. And the franchise period is one of 15 years. For the WKCD, the facilities will be commissioned in phases. So perhaps you should renew it on the basis of 5 years. Do not just grant a franchise in one go of up to 15 years, only to operate these two routes. Secretary, thank you, Dr. Wong, for the question. First, about renewing the franchise. We discuss on the basis of their existing scope of operation. I understand we have new development areas, we have existing piers without the operation of any ferry service at the moment. If there is a need in the community, and if there is a need to operate marine transport, we will initiate a tendering process based on need, because we need to allow open bidding. A franchise period of 15 years, that's Dr. Wong said, whether it would be too long. According to the precedent, is up to 15 years, but it's up to the executive and council to decide exactly how long. What about operating new routes? Written reply, please, if need be. I can tell you there is a demand. Well, Dr. Wong, 3 minutes each only. Written reply, Secretary. So, Secretary, you have heard comments from all the members. Please discuss with the relevant government departments and the Star Ferry Company. See how you can take on board members' suggestions. This wraps up the discussion of this item. I'll now hand over the stage to Mr. Frankie Yik for the remaining items. Thank you. Item 5, about widening of Tai Po Road Sha Tin section. Let's invite the administration in.
Oh, 福利，呢個大家都關心㗎嘛。得。OK， 我哋首先嚟歡迎。
May I first welcome representatives of the government officials, and if you wish to speak, please press the request to speak button in front of you. We have a rather tight schedule. We are lagging behind a bit. So, Deputy Secretary, thank you. Chairman, I'll be brief. I would like to introduce to members our funding proposal to widen Tai Po Road Sha Tin section. It is an important primary distributor route linking Northeast NT with West Kowloon and Tsuen Wan. At the moment, for Tai Po Road between Sha Tin Plaza near Sha Tin Rural Committee Road and Manual House of Warshare Estate near Fort Tan Road is a dual two-lane carriageway. Traffic congestion frequently occurs at this section during peak hours. The congestion will worsen in view of the continued development in Sha Tin and Northern New Territories. We therefore need to carry out the widening works of the above road section to modify the interchange to meet the demand. Upon completion of the project, it is anticipated that the VT ratios during peak hours at Tai Po Road in 2026 will be improved. The journey time can be reduced from about 20 minutes to 10 minutes. For southbound morning traffic, and we estimate the cost of the proposed works to be $2,739.7 million of the MOD prices. We urge members to support our proposal. With members' support, we'll submit the proposal to Public Works Subcommittee and also the Finance Committee for approval. Subject to this approval, the CEDD will commence works in the second quarter of this year for completion in the third quarter of 2023. I will now defer to the CEDD colleagues to give you details of the project. Who would like to give a start? Mr. Yuan. For Taipei Road Sha-Tin section, it is an important primary distributor road linking Northeast NT and West Kowloon. It is linked to the Castle Peak Road and also other parts of the New Territories. And at the moment, it's a dual two-lane carriageway. Traffic congestion often occurs during peak hours. As you can see in this slide, for Kowloon bound during peak hours, the tailbacks goes all the way to the Sha-Tin sewage treatment plant. And for Taipo bound during peak hours, it reaches the tailback reaches Mei Lam Estate in Taipo. With continued development in Sha-Tin and Northern New Territories, traffic congestion will worsen. Upon completion of the works, by 2026, the anticipated VC ratio will be improved. During morning peak hours for Kowloon bound, it will be improved from 1.34 to 1.07. As for northbound, during peak hours in the morning, it will improve from 1.39 to 1.01. The works involve widening the section of road of about 1.1 kilometers near Sha-Tin Plaza and Sha-Tin Road Committee Road and Memorial House of Water Estate near Fotan Road. It will be widened, and there will also be erection of noise barriers and other relevant facilities. At the moment, at the Sha-Tin Rural Committee Road interchange, traffic is very busy, and there will be consolidation of traffic lights so that there will be 2 sets of traffic lights only to minimize the hazard there. And for the slip roads on both sides, there will also be changes so that vehicles can turn directly to Sha-Tin Rural Committee Road without waiting for the light. And there will also be a bus lane so that buses can go directly to the terminus at Sha-Tin City Plaza without waiting for the light as well. For the Kowloon bound, there would be another slip road that would allow vehicles to turn directly to Taipo Road middle section to minimize the traffic impact. And then at the interchange, there will also be other improvement facilities such as cycle track, pavement, and also escalators or lift towers. And the project also involves improving the footbridge near Feng Wo Street and Feng Yip Lane in line with the widening of Taipo Road. Now, our work schedule, we hope to have the PWSC support and the FC support respectively in the first and second quarter of 2018, so that works can commence in the second quarter of this year for completion in the second half of 2023. Alright, before members begin to speak, I'd like to remind members that in accordance with Rule 83A of the Rules of Procedure, in relation to the item discussed today, if there is any direct or indirect pecuniary interest, please disclose the nature of the interest before you speak. So, questions from members now? Mr. Lam Shak-ting. 4 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. I live in Sha-Tin, and every day I travel past this location on a bus. I understand traffic congestion is very serious. In North District, Taipo, Sha-Tin, I understand that passengers going to the Northeast NT will often need to pass by this junction and experience a delay because of traffic congestion. I hope that the government can act as quickly as possible and complete the works. Now, the government's estimation is that the works won't be completed until the end of 2023. So my first question is this. Can you expedite the progress of the works? Because for Northeast NT, Queensville Development, etc., North District will have its population increased by close to 300,000. With such a huge demand for public transport, and especially for the East Rail, it has almost reached its capacity. And every now and then there are signaling problems, technical problems. I want to know whether the relevant departments can complete the project as soon as possible. At the same time, you should also ensure that there won't be any delay, which will worsen traffic congestion. And with additional population intake in Northeast NT, the problem will become worse. Deputy Secretary, we understand the situation. I'd like to complete the works as soon as possible as well. I'll defer to Mr. Wong from CDD to answer other parts of your question. About the works schedule, we understand the time is rather long, but like Mr. Yun said, the project involves revamping the Sha Tin Rural Committee Road interchange. At the moment, it is a busy junction. To maintain the operation of the existing carriageway, we need to build a temporary flyover. It will be taken down in phases, in nine phases, and then for improvement works altogether 16 phases.
I understand that we should try our best to shorten the time required. So, if contractor has other better solutions and designs, they can propose to us so as to shorten the construction period as much as possible. Mr. Lam, thank you, Chairman. I have another question. During the construction period, the government should communicate well with nearby residents and groups. There are many residential areas nearby, so during the works, there will be a lot of noise and dust nuisance. The government should try to avoid causing nuisance because some large plants and machinery will be deployed during construction. And so if any disturbance is caused to residents' rest, that will have to be avoided. Yes, thank you, Chairman. This is our concern as well. During construction phase, if there is any noise or environment nuisance or impacts, we will put in place mitigation measures. I'll see whether Mr. Wong has anything to add. Before the start of works, we will set up a team comprising colleagues of the geotechnical division and also contractor representatives and also resident representatives. So with this group, we will disseminate information during different stages of construction. At the same time, we will also put in place improvement measures. Okay, we have already overrun in the first agenda item. So I hope you won't exceed your time limit. You are given 4 minutes each. Thank you, Chairman. Every morning when I come back to Leshko, I use the Chun Kam Road, and then I move on to Sha Tin section of Tai Po Road to the Chim Shan Tunnel. So I do have feelings about the increase in congestion. Now, if you talk about the southbound traffic, no matter whether you are going to the Chim Shan Tunnel, Lion Rock Tunnel, or Tai Lo Shan Tunnel, it is very congested. Every morning, I must set out before 7:30 a.m. Otherwise, after 7:30 a.m., it will take more than 20 minutes, even 30 minutes for these 3 sections because the congestion is very serious. In NT East, for the main trunk roads, even though all along the government has been trying their best to improve the situation, including the widening of the typo section and also the fanning section, now they want to also widen the Sha Tin section. Of course, I will support it. Whenever a section is widened, the bottleneck is pushed to another spot. As shown in the paper, if widening works is not carried out, then in 2026, the ratio between traffic and capacity will be very, very bad. After widening work is carried out, the traffic volume over capacity still exceeds 1. So in the long run, how can you alleviate the traffic in NT East? Well, in NT West, there is route number 11 offering another option. Then what about NT East? And then for this widening of Sha Tin section of Taipo Road, I think you have to very carefully consider the situation because questions will be asked at the PWSC. Well, there are some very, very tall trees along the road, and in the Sha Tin District Council, when noise barrier was discussed, well, because of the tree issue, the problem was not resolved. So now looking at your alignment, it seems that some trees will be removed, but we are talking about very nice trees. So can they be planted at other places? I'm sure someone will ask you this question at PWSC. Besides, residents of Sha Tin are concerned about this. We agree that the road should be widened, but the trees should also be well taken care of. Who will take the question? Ms. Pun. Thank you, member, for the question. Apart from this widening plan, this Sha Tin section widening plan, on the 9th of January, we went to Sha Tin District Council to make a report on the latest alignment of T4. Based on my understanding, members in general supported us, so the CEDD, in relation to the improved alignment of T4, will do a survey study. After the study is done, we will continue to push forth this T4 trunk road. As regards the long-term plan, member's point is right. Concerning the 2030 railway and main trunk road study, we will include this in the study to identify solutions to solve the traffic problems. Thank you. Next, Mr. Chen Han-pan, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. Concerning the Sha Tin section of Taipo Road, it is already seriously congested. Recently, we received from the Alliance about congestion in NT East. Well, they had gathered many signatures within a short period of time asking for urgent improvement. Now, the works will only be completed in 2023, and then in 2026, even with the 2 options, there will be congestion 1.07 and 1.01. So in other words, this work cannot really totally solve the congestion problem in NT East. A new option is called for. So we are looking at Sha Tin bypass and other main trunk roads. Now, if you look at Putong and the North District, there will be a lot of development. So this road is going to be a very limiting factor. And the secretary said that in the 2030 plan, they will start some road works. Now, if you wait for the 2030 plan, well, that is a long time away. So things will only happen in the 10 years between 2030 and 2040. So concerning road design for NT East and NT West, can you do it earlier? For example, in 2025? You cannot wait till 2030. 5 years is a long period. So will the government consider this? Deputy Secretary, thank you, Chairman. I said that in the strategic study on railways and trunk roads 2030, we will follow things up. We have an open mind concerning any alignment as long as there is appropriate road alignment to solve the population growth problems in NT East, then we'll consider. So after getting the required funding, we hope that the study can commence this year. And then based on the results, we will do follow-up work. For any large-scale work, we understand that that will take a long time, so we will start preparation early. As regards interim measures, well, today we are proposing this widening works and also the T4 road. Chairman, I understand that the 2030 plan is a big project. You have to put in a lot of time and effort. If you look at the 2014 Railway Development Plan, well, it's now 2018 already, and a lot of plans can still not be finalized, even within 2018. So if you talk about the 2030 plan, I don't know whether things can be completed or finalized by 2040. So with this approach, I am so worried that NT East and NT West will be highly congested. So will you set up a task force to work on the road network, taking into consideration the population growth? Please be fast and more mechanical. Please don't wait for the big plan. Deputy Secretary, we are clear of the suggestion. We hope that the study can start earlier. We need to do an overall review, and then we will do follow-up work accordingly after that. Next, Mr. LAU Kwok-fan, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. We have been looking forward to this project for a long time. Actually, in the last electrical term, it should have been passed, but because of filibustering, we are given this proposal now. So this will only be completed by 2023. So in NT East, there will be 5 more years of congestion. Now, every day in NT East, in the North District, Tai Po and Sha Tin, this particular spot is very congested, especially during morning time. So if we are to use the Chim Shan tunnel, well, actually, because of this spot, people are deterred from using that tunnel. But because there is a delay for a few years, it will only be completed in 2023. Well, there will be bigger population in NT East. And even if it is completed, it will be saturated soon. So I hope that the Bureau will put in place some measures to improve the road network of NT East and Tolo Harbor. We had suggested Sha Tin bypass. So I hope you will give a more active response. In NT West, in Tuen Mun, Thailand, and also there is the route number 11 study. But for NT East, you still only rely on Tolo Harbor. This is not enough. I will support this proposal definitely, but I hope that you will start preparation of other roads or routes. And also, the railway is also going to be saturated. My next point is, for Fanling Road, several works are now being undertaken. And so because of all the works, sometimes there will be rerouting, and so there is bigger chance of congestion. This is a congestion black spot. So during the works period, will the problem be even worse? Because the road surface may be narrowed. So there is such big congestion already. So during that 5-year period, what will happen? Okay, I will ask Mr. Wong to talk about the engineering or works arrangement as regards anti-northwest traffic problem. It should be resolved as soon as possible. We understand that point. Mr. Wong, now concerning the construction period, the contractor cannot reduce the number of lanes. In principle, there must be at least two-lane traffic to be maintained. Before construction starts, the contractor must submit all the traffic diversion plans, and then the transport department will work with the police closely. They need the approval of the transport department and the police before they can start the works. And if necessary, if there is the need for short-term closure of roads during the night time, we will ask the contractor to submit contingency plans and also plan about deployment of equipment, so that there will be enough space or buffer to make sure that road closure will be minimized. Well, yes, we support you.
But when you submit the item to the PWSC and FC, please also submit information about the VC ratio to make sure that there will not be very different from the existing situation, and that there will not be a major impact. We are behind schedule. I need to draw a line. I see other members would like to ask questions. Mr. Wilson, all 4 minutes. Please observe the rules strictly. I absolutely agree with this proposal to upgrade the project to Category A. NT East is also experiencing traffic issues. Now, even with FC's endorsement of the proposal, project will not be completed until 2023. It's too late. I hope the administration will go back and consider whether it is possible to expedite the progress so that some parts of the project can be carried out at the same time, so that you can further deal with the traffic congestion in NT East. And another point, there are traffic congestions at different sections of the road, and road improvement works are needed. Can you respond to Mr. Ben Chan, my fellow party member's suggestion, whether the administration can set up a dedicated team to comprehensively review the various issues in our traffic and road network and come up with solutions? Do not just apply stopgap measures. Yes. Yes, we should commence the project as soon as possible. As the paper suggests, to compress the timetable, the CDD yesterday, or rather today, will commence the tendering process for the project. But of course, we can only award the contract when we get approval from the Finance Committee, but we will do our best to expedite the progress. I will defer to Mr. Wong to further explain how works can be expedited. As for the various traffic issues in different districts, I believe that the Transport Department and other departments are closely monitoring the situation. And in the short term, the Transport Department would see when, in the short term, we can improve the traffic condition in other areas. And for the medium and long term, we need to implement projects as soon as possible. Mr. Wong, about the works timetable, the key of the project is to revamp the flyover at the Sha Tin Road Committee Road interchange. We need to maintain a two-lane dual carriageway, and that is why redeveloping the flyover will take 9 phases, together with building and demolishing a temporary flyover before and after the major phases. There will be 16 phases altogether. We'll try to compress the timetable, and if the contractor can come up with ideas with the use of their own machinery so as to compress the timetable, we welcome these ideas. Well, the DS hasn't answered my question. Well, Mr. Ben Chan's time has run out, so I'm helping him follow up on the matter. Will you consider Mr. Ben Chan's suggestion to set up an independent and dedicated team to comprehensively review the traffic conditions territory-wide? Yes, so thank you for your comment. I'll go back and relay this view to the Bureau. I'd like to have a response. Otherwise, at the PWSC, I'll follow up on it. All right, please go back and seek a view from your Bureau. Next, Mr. Gary Chan, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. Well, we need to kickstart this project as soon as possible, because for Tai Po Road Sha Tin section here, the traffic congestion during peak hours is particularly serious. The Sha Tin Road Committee Road interchange is one of the major bottlenecks. We need to kickstart the project as soon as possible. But I also note, according to the paper, that the project won't be completed until 2023. But even so, by 2026, 3 years later, the junction will be saturated again. So if we're spending 5 years' time just to alleviate traffic congestion there for 3 years, I wonder if there is any longer-term solution to eliminate the problem of traffic congestion there. The other point is that the interchange is a bottleneck of traffic congestion. Even if you make good arrangements with the contractor, there might be mishaps. For example, when we are constructing the Liantang Hengyun YBCP in North District, there was a problem with erecting those barriers for changing lanes, and as a result, there were major traffic issues. I want to know whether the department has a proposal, or whether you're directly liaising with the contractor in a case of a traffic accident leading to major traffic congestion, whether you will open up some of the closed roads so as to immediately alleviate the traffic congestion there. 2 questions. DS, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chan. Upon completion of the project in 2026, the VC ratio will be slightly over 1, which means that traffic congestion will be under control. Of course, we will consider other measures to help ease traffic congestion in Sha Tin. I'll defer to my colleague to take your question, and also Mr. Wong can supplement on the interchange. Should we start with Mr. Ho? About traffic condition, as the Deputy Secretary mentioned, the VC ratio is 1 or slightly more than 1. We could call it a smooth traffic condition. And apart from this project, at the district level, we also have improvement works at various junctions. We are preparing short-term proposals to address the issues. At this preliminary stage, improvements can be seen upon completion of these works in 2018 or 19. Mr. Wong, about temporary traffic arrangements when work is in progress, we will advise the contractor and the work supervisor to come up with proper planning before implementing any temporary traffic measures. Most importantly, there should be backup or contingency plans so that when accident happens, they can rely on the contingency plan. Chairman, I don't want to get in the way of the project. I want it to be commenced as soon as possible as well. However, when the item is submitted to the FC, please also tell us the contingency measures. Next, Mr. Michael TIEN, 4 minutes. I don't think I need 4 minutes, Chairman. About the noise barrier, I understand that we have partially enclosed noise barriers in Hong Kong, but you know the sentiment, people think that fully enclosed noise barriers are the best. So, and it's not about money. I think your suggestion comes from two grounds. First, we already meet the environmental standards and there is no need to have a fully enclosed one. And second, it is technically not feasible to have a fully enclosed barrier. So which one is it, Mr. Wong? About the noise barrier, we follow the EIA's requirement. So we have a halfly enclosed noise barrier on one side, and the other side we have another panel leaving a space, but the space will be close to the hillside. It will be pointing upwards. And all the noise-sensitive receivers, buildings, residents, they will be covered. As for whether we need a fully enclosed noise barrier, as the section only spans 1.1 kilometer, if we are to erect a fully enclosed noise barrier, we need to resolve issues. For example, ventilation, air pollution. We need to have an air ventilation system. And also emergency escape, and the roads are narrow there. If we need to build a ventilation system there, it will be very costly. And like Mr. Tian said, we need to find space for, say, the ventilation shaft. So, having considered the cost effectiveness and other factors, we believe that the existing proposal can deal with the issue. So, are you suggesting you need to comply with the fire service regulations and that you need to put in a lot of resources to meet the requirement? Is it that it is still technically feasible, or is it that because of lack of space it's technically infeasible? I think Mr. Wong has answered your question. As I said, we need to consider providing a ventilation system, and there is not a suitable location, a Lau Tai Po road, to erect a ventilation shaft. So you don't have space, right? You do not have space, so you're sure that it cannot be installed, the ventilation system. So that's simple. If there is no space, end of discussion. Members, do you support submitting this item to the Public Works Subcommittee? Yes, as soon as possible. Chairman, at the Public Works Committee, I also hope that it will be passed as soon as possible, as you wish. And also Finance Committee. So this panel agrees the item to be submitted. There are a number of concerns, whether the works timetable can be suppressed, whether you can have some works kick-started at the same time. As for the NT-West the development is underway, and there are problems along the road network. So please don't wait for 2030 when you have a holistic plan. At least work on this area. Do something to ease the situation. Next item. New generation of parking meter system. I'll invite the administration in. We have a fire drill today. I hope we can end the meeting on time. We have only 30 minutes. Members, if you wish to ask questions, please press the button.
好，我首先係歡迎官員出。
So may I welcome the administration to our meeting. We have the attendance list, and in the interest of time, I won't go through the list. So, Under Secretary Dr. So, you would like to give a briefing? Thank you, Chairman. I'll speak very briefly. On-street parking spaces are provided by the government to cater for the short-term parking needs of motorists. These parking spaces are normally metered to discourage prolonged parking. That is so-called parking meters. Across the territory, there are altogether about 9,800 parking meters to regulate about 18,000 on-street parking spaces. These parking meters were put into use since 2003 and 2004. They will soon approach the end of their serviceable life and need to be replaced. The Chief Executive 2017 Policy Address points out, and is also pointed out in the Blueprint for a Smart City published last month, that a new generation of on-street parking meters will be installed starting from 2019-2020, and we believe that there should be new functions. For example, they should support payment of parking fees through multiple means, including new payment models. For example, contactless store-valued cards and e-wallets, etc. Depending on the outcome of the open tender, the actual mode of payment will be decided, but then it should reflect the latest development in the market. Second, there should be remote parking, payment of parking fees through mobile applications. And we also suggest that drivers can pay for the parking meters through their mobile phones.
In order to make sure that vehicle or users cannot occupy the parking spaces for too long period, where at most only two consecutive periods will be allowed. Besides, there will be real-time information to help drivers to identify vacant spaces. Transport Department can collect data about utilization of various spaces. Based on the data, the settings of the meters can be adjusted to meet traffic needs. The Transport Department will continue to encourage public car park operators to offer online information to make good use of the parking spaces. For the new generation meters, they are not separate payment systems. In fact, they are some modules being integrated over the internet. So we want to make sure that there will be appropriate management and repair. So we hope that hardware and software procurement can be managed properly, so that there will also be a repair and maintenance for the meters. We will conduct open tendering to select the repair management and supply operators. 12,300 new generation meters will be procured to replace all the meters. In new development areas, we will install these meters to satisfy people's needs for on-street parking spaces. Since 1994, the fee is $2 per 15 minutes. Well, actually, a Hong Kong road congestion study report was submitted, and there are some short-term, medium-term measures. One of the measures is to increase the fee of using these on-street parking spaces to reduce the possibility of users occupying these spaces for too long period, or users or drivers going around the roads to look for these spaces. So we just suggest that the fee should be adjusted to $4 or $5 per 15 minutes, and then on an hourly basis, it will be at maximum like $15. So we will take into consideration parking needs to set a price ceiling of not higher than $4 per 15 minutes. Given this fee proposal, the government will have to amend Cap 374 and the subsidiary legislation. So for 2018-19, the government will table the proposal to LegCo, and we hope that in 2019-20, the new meters will be installed to gradually replace the existing ones. We welcome any views from members. Thank you. Undersecretary. I have received a temporary motion from Mr. Michael TIEN related to this agenda item. At 12:30, there will be a fire drill. We should adjourn this meeting at 12:15. So, may I extend this meeting by 10 minutes so that we will adjourn at 12:25. So I will have to leave some time to handle Mr. Michael TIEN's motion. 9 members have indicated their wish to speak. Each will have 3 minutes. Now I will cut your speech on time. Ms. Claudia Mo, well, of course, we welcome the use of apps concerning remote parking, and you only allow at maximum 2 hours. I agree. A bigger problem is you can still ask people living nearby to make use of a SIM card to occupy the space, right? Then that is not fair. People cannot occupy the spaces in a remote way, but if there are people who help you pay by a certain payment card physically, then they can occupy the space. Well, can you just abolish the 30-minute spaces so all spaces will be on a 2-hour basis? That will make things easier. Usually, for tendering, the lowest bidder will win. Why don't you consider a bidder who will offer the most electronic payment options? Undersecretary, thank you, Ms. Mo, for the question. Based on the law, for each parking space, the vehicle can be parked for 24 hours at most. A remote payment is to convenience the public so that they can use the latest technology. Of course, we will review the situation based on the actual data. The new generation meters can gather big data, and the back end can also help us do better traffic management with the data. Concerning abolition of the 30-minute spaces, well, the new meters have a new function. So based on parking demand in each district, there will be flexible management of the spaces. So we can gather more data to assess traffic needs, and then we can be more flexible in our arrangement. Concerning tendering, perhaps the department can answer questions that are more technical in nature. Ms. Lee, thank you, Chairman. In relation to the new generation parking meters, we will conduct open tendering to select the service operators. Now, for these service providers, they can make use of different payment methods. We are still working out the assessment criteria. We will consider different aspects. For example, they must hold license. Well, I know the best thing is to make things convenient for the public instead of only going for the lowest fee. Okay, this point is similar to Mr. Michael TIEN's motion. Next, Mr. Chan Hak-kan. I do support this proposal because the existing meters are outdated already, but I don't think the fee should be increased because there are not enough on-street parking spaces, and it really falls short of the increase in the number of vehicles. So if you increase fees, then private car parks will also increase fees. It is very difficult to find private car park charging $20 an hour. Some charge $30 or even $40 an hour. So if you increase meter fees, well, a vicious cycle will result. And when it comes to the smart meters, I think they are really low tech. There is only this function of remote payment, but then in mainland China, they don't need meters. People can use WeChat Pay, then the operator will know whether they are parking in a legal way. So those meters you are proposing are low tech. Now, Chairman, you know, both you and I advocate EVs. And in Europe, I think this has been done already, since you are also promoting EVs. So you should make things convenient for the users. Okay, who will take the question? The second point is a technical one. Thank you, Mr. Chen, for the question. Let me answer his first question. The technical questions will be answered by the department. Why does the government want to adjust the maximum fee of the meters? So since 1994, the fee was $2 per 15 minutes. So far, it has not been adjusted. The reason of adjustment is to avoid vehicles being parked in a certain space for too long time. We hope to see more turnover so that more users can use the spaces. In December 2014, a study report on Hong Kong road congestion was issued. There are 12 points of improvement measures. One of them is to increase meter fees to reduce waiting time, reduce the possibility of long time occupation of parking spaces, and also shorten the time of which users or drivers have to drive around nearby roads. The proposed maximum fee is still relatively low. It doesn't mean that all spaces will be charged at the same price. The Transport Department will look at the actual demand. So in busy areas, we propose a fee of $5 per 15 minutes to more effectively manage the traffic. Even if the fee is increased, it is still lower than private car parks. So this will not lead to an increase of fees at private car parks. Undersecretary, can you be brief? Because I think the time is used up already. Please wait for your next round, Mr. Chen. Mr. LAU Kwok-fan, I support the use of new generation parking meters. Real-time information about availability of spaces is very helpful. So people don't need to go to a certain place to find parking spaces. But if you take this opportunity to increase fee, well, we think that you are like robbing the public, because there are not enough parking spaces now. And if you increase parking fees by 100% or even more, then private car parks operators will increase fees right away. So this will increase people's burden. So we hope you will consider this point. Besides, you said that you are only talking about the maximum fee at $4 or $5. However, if we support you, then how can we monitor or know where you will apply the maximum fee and where the existing fee will be kept? Now, for instance, in Yau Yat Chun, $2 per half hour is charged. But then in Shek Wu Hui, the fee is $2 per 15 minutes. So I think this means that the fee is even lower in wealthy districts. So I don't know what the criteria are. So if we give you our support, then what will be the criteria adopted? First of all, I am against the increase of fees, but besides, I want to know the criteria you use to set the parking fees. Thank you, Mr. Lau. I think there are 2 points in your remarks. First, you said there are inadequate parking spaces. Second, determination of parking fees. Well, that point will be answered by the Transport Department. In the 2017 policy address, the CE said the government will put in place some short-term and medium-term measures to increase parking spaces in different districts. We will offer parking spaces for private vehicles. So we will also look at some loading and unloading areas for the use of nighttime parking. Well, we are aware of those, but then I think those measures can't solve immediate problems. Oh, time is up. I won't allow any more colleague to press the button. Next, Dr. LAU Kwok. Thank you, Chairman. New generation meters and also new technology for payments and also charging as suggested by colleagues. Well, definitely we will support them. Since the government will invest in the new meter system, I think you should give more detailed consideration. Concerning the increase of parking fees, well, some time ago, concerning the increase of fixed penalty for illegal parking, well, at the end of the day, you had to withdraw that suggestion. Well, I think you should just focus on the improvement measure. Now, there is a serious lack of parking spaces.
It's angry even if one isn't a driver. Earlier, we just endorsed a number of motions on parking issues. But the government is backpedaling. Even with new ideas such as multi-story car park buildings, you are unwilling to implement them. You play deaf to any suggestion. If you have any political wisdom, don't be so dumb. I support the new meter parking system. I think we need to improve it, but at the same time, I hope that you will rethink the issue of raising parking fees. Well, I was in Shakmun the other day to attend an industrial gathering, and I found that cars were illegally parked everywhere, and there was nowhere to properly park the car because parking spaces were so insufficient. You're forcing everybody to park illegally in the street, and if you just take a look at on-street parking spaces, it is insufficient. And in the community, some residents have just suggested to the government that parking spaces could be provided at some locations since they're familiar with the community. But again, you turn a deaf ear to them. And for new government buildings, likewise, more parking spaces should be provided. A number of comments. Undersecretary, thank you, Dr. Low, for your suggestions. The government is actively looking into the idea of building a multi-story car park building and providing more on-street parking, metered parking. We heed the public's views. Next, Mr. Michael TIEN. Thank you, Chairman. Undersecretary, I think you are improving a lot in terms of the speed of your reply. And it's really rare that Ms. Claudia Mo shares my view. I hope you will support my motion in a moment. I have 3 points to make. First, on open tender for a contractor for this service, I think that instead of the lowest bidder wins, you should try to engage more in the initiative because the price doesn't it really affect the public coffers? Well, and I am really struggling about whether to support the increase of parking fees. Well, very often people occupy the parking spaces for a long time, and I think that if we increase the fares, perhaps the drivers would tend to drive the vehicles away sooner. And about the new generation parking meter system, it is convenient. Well, perhaps because you do not have the remote function at the moment, you tend to pay up to 2 hours, and then the drivers would just take their time, take a stroll before coming back to take their car. But if you have a remote parking system, then when the time is right, they would come back and drive the car away. They would not take it slow because they've paid the fares. I think that this will help increase the turnover of parking spaces. However, I'm against the idea of using the mobile phone to extend the parking time from 2 to 4 hours, because the idea is to make it inconvenient for the drivers, such that every 2 hours they would need to come back to feed the meter, so to speak, so as to increase turnover. And if you allow the use of mobile phone to extend the time, in essence, the total parking time would be 4 hours. Point number 4, enforcement. Instead of relying on or troubling the police, we should install CCTV instead. Whenever the time is up, a photo can be taken to serve as deterrence, and then the vehicle can be booked so as to make sure the drivers either come back to feed the meter or to drive away their vehicle. You have 10 seconds to reply, Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Tian, for the question. About tendering, the Transport Department, when there is time, can respond. The purpose of the mobile app is to make it convenient for the public, and there is also a hotline for complaints so that enforcement officers can take enforcement action. And my turn. I'm sorry, I beg to differ regarding your second point, because if you're lucky enough to find a space on the street, you need to feed the meter to the full, so to speak, so that you don't need to hurry. For Hong Kong people, time is of essence. When I have completed what I need to do, of course, I would drive away my vehicle. I would not just stay there for the sake of the meter. So we should allow the mobile app to extend the meter parking time. However, I think we need to review the situation. Some cars are allowed to park there 24/7. That's the existing law. At night, you don't need to pay. That means you can just park there around the clock for the whole day. And you need to change that, because the objective is to increase the turnover. So I think that if you propose a change, should be supported. I'll let the Transport Department to respond to that. You're installing new parking meters anyway. Will you consider using smart technology to allow charging of vehicles? Thank you, Chairman. For on-street parking meters, they serve to meet the short-term parking needs. We need to consider the fact that if we provide charging facilities at the parking spots, we may generate additional demand for on-street charging of EVs. We need to be careful about it. Some drivers may have their own parking space in the car park, but because of the need to charge the EVs, they may instead use parking meters. But you can impose a fee. Well, we need to be careful about generating additional demand. It will depend on the development of EVs and the charging facilities. I think we can further discuss this issue when it comes to my motion. I think in the long term, the administration, to give it a thought, maybe not in the maybe in the longer term, there should be charging facilities for on-street parking meters. Of course, you can charge a fee instead of offering free service like some shopping malls do at the moment. Next, Mr. Charles Mok. About the fees, I think many members already touched upon the issue. You propose $5. I don't know whether you want to start a bargain. I don't quite agree with Undersecretary that it will not cost private parking facilities to increase their parking fees. Just a few days ago, the proposal to increase the penalty for illegal parking was vetoed. I don't quite agree because they seek to punish the offenders. But now for the law-abiding drivers using proper parking, you raise the fees to punish them. I think at least you should increase the fare to $3 only to make it reasonable. And the other point about increasing turnover, Mr. Yik opposes extending the parking time from 2 to 4 hours. I don't agree because I think with the use of mobile app, you don't need to physically go and feed the meter. And with big data, you can check whether parking spaces are available. If parking spaces are available, you should allow him to extend the time up to even 10 hours. I don't think you should take a broad brush approach. The third point is about data. You have data, you will be having data, and please make good use of the data available so the traffic wardens and the police would know about unfed meters being occupied illegally, and that you can book the vehicles immediately. At the same time, you should make the data available in the public domain. Third point about charging facilities, you cannot just say that you would monitor the development of EVs. It's already the trend. Parking meters of the new generation won't be installed in full by 2022, and then their service life may be a decade. The problem is, if you continue to have parking meters on street without parking facilities, other countries are already talking about 2030, 2040. By then, there will be full implementation of EVs. By then, Hong Kong will be lagging behind again because of our decision 10 years before. You don't need to monitor the situation. Other countries are already implementing the idea. Undersecretary. Thank you, Mr. Charles Mok, for his question. 4 topics. Fare hikes. First of all, I need to emphasize that this is the maximum fee. It doesn't mean that we're going to standardize the fees. If we use a mobile app, we can provide convenience for users. On sharing data, it's true that on-street parking meters can serve to collect big data, and it will also facilitate law enforcement agencies to carry out enforcement action. And Undersecretary, time is up. Next, Mr. Man Chen. Thank you, Chairman. Increasing the fixed penalty amount and parking fees is an implementation of the recommendation of the Traffic Advisory Committee, which is out of touch with reality because you don't have sufficient parking spaces, and if you just increase the parking meter fees, it won't do. First of all, you need to improve the supply of parking spaces, at least bring it on a par with the Hong Kong PSG. We are aggrieved. So first of all, the administration should review the composition of the Traffic Advisory Committee, see if the recommendations are out of touch with what's really happening. We've been repeatedly saying that we have insufficient parking spaces. You refuse to pay heed, and this is just the second step, and in the next few steps you are going to follow the TAC's recommendations as well. Please also listen to us at the same time. The other point is, according to other members just now, if you increase the parking meter fees, you only start a vicious cycle. Other car parks will also impose substantial fee hikes. As a result, there will be more drivers waiting on street for parking meters. Well, you may say that after increasing the parking meter fees, the fees in other car parks will raise correspondingly. That's the TAC's recommendation. But that's very easy to understand. As far as economics is concerned, private car parks, of course, will raise their fees accordingly. So I, for one, am against the increase of fees. Next, about making adjustments to the new generation of parking meters, you're going to amend the local legislation. I'd like you to take this opportunity to review the situation. At the moment, we have parking meters being occupied by some for business activities. They may occupy the activities all day. When there is no police, they don't feed the parking meter. They feed the parking meters only when there is a police officer nearby. And under the present legislation, you can only book the driver if it occupies for more than 24 hours. There is a loophole in the existing legislation, so you should go back and review the situation and see whether you can have additional provisions to curb the abuse of parking meters illegally. Thank you, member, for the comments. We will take note of your point on TAC, and the TAC also have recommendations. Well, I think it's just time before we move on to deal with Mr. Michael Tien's motion. I think Undersecretary and your team have heard us loud and clear. We do have strong views on increasing parking meter fees. At the same time, you should review the current law that allows vehicles to occupy a parking meter for up to 24 hours. And also point 3 of Michael Tien's motion. Does it help if we install CCTVs at parking meters? I don't know whether you'd like to give us a written reply suggesting how you're going to deal with these issues. All right, let's deal with Mr. Michael Tien's motion.
麻煩
Secretary, can you show it on the screen? Mr. Michael Tien, just now I think you had explained your motion in detail. Right. I just want to go through some calculations. 1 minute for you. Most members will agree to my point number 1 and 3. Point number 2 is most controversial. So I think this is the riskiest moment when I move motion at this panel. Let me remind you, if people can use apps to pay remotely, then in other words, well, 2-hour meter will become 4-hour because they can pay for an additional round. Now, if you want to make things convenient for users, then have you thought of those waiting for spaces? Next time when you need to find a space, and then you see some spaces that will only be vacated after 4 hours, how will you feel? So please think carefully. You are indirectly turning 2 hours into 4-hour space. How much money is involved here? Well, we want to increase turnover. That's the point. The government doesn't really want to increase income by means of this. We don't have a quorum now, so we need to ring the bell for 5 minutes.
我提醒議員呢係需要。
Members, let me remind you that you need to return to your own seats.
仲爭4個。3個。我唔贊成，政府原先就係佢咁樣講啦，咁我講完去改咗。你整咩出嚟做咩啫？你唔俾我 top up 一次，你不如唔好做。咁噶啦。阿邊隻分開投票啊？我幫你㗎。唉，你分咗3條啦。你不如咁啊！你掹起第2條咁樣。
Perhaps you can withdraw point number 2. Then I think members will support your points number 1 and 3. Perhaps you can delete number 2.
唔係。
OK， 我仲有。
All right, I have 2 more minutes. Let me think about it. I cannot think as quickly as you can. Mr. Tien, once we have a quorum, I will start the vote, so you may not have 2 minutes. Chairman, okay, let me remove point number 2. I will move this point later. I will gather more views online first. Okay, I will delete number 2, so only number 1 and 3 will remain. Okay, we have got a quorum now, so we need to take a vote. After discussion between Mr. Tien and other members present, he has decided to delete number 2. So now we will vote on whether we agree to points number 1 and 3. So let's do a show of hand. Those in favor, hands up, please. Chairman, I think not only the number 2 should be deleted. Okay, those against, hands up please. No abstention. No abstention. So this motion is carried. So we can conclude our meeting here. There is no other business. Meeting is adjourned.